that the Mexicans have a very strong case, that it's very unlikely that she would be extradited.
New information in the Shanquella Robinson case as the FBI releases some of its files after a news media FOIA request. Robinson left her home in Charlotte to take a trip to Cabo San Lucas, Mexico with 5 friends in October 2022. She died on the trip. The FBI records reveal that on November 9th, a man showed up here to the FBI Charlotte field office to provide information about what he believed was Robinson's murder. Her friends have said Robinson died from alcohol poisoning after a night of heavy drinking, but the medical examiner in Cabo says she died from a broken...
Okay, everyone, so it appears that the federal government is finally prepared to take action in the murder case of Shanquella Robinson after nearly 3 years, because recently released documents appear to show that Shanquella's friends, known as the Cabo Six, killed Shanquella during their trip to Cabo, Mexico in 2022. The case has been dragging ever since, despite the fact that it proceeded fairly swiftly at first, particularly after social media users were outraged by what we learned about the case. The Cabo Six have been defending themselves since then, saying that they were innocent and that they never touched Shanquella, but it appears that they have been lying through their teeth, because both eyewitness accounts and the federal investigation have shown that the Cabo Six were lying and that they allegedly killed Shanquella. Let's break this down completely. This case has been dragging on for almost 3 years, and everyone thought it was going to be a cold case or at least unresolved due to a lack of evidence. The murder occurred, and was the entire thing planned by the group before they even left us for Mexico. In the weeks after the murder, there was a public outcry that calls for justice, but as the weeks passed into months and the months into years, we heard less and less about the case until the public's interest subsided, and it seemed as though the feds had completely forgotten about it. This is because they recently released an update promising to see some sort of justice for Shanquella Robinson. Over the past few weeks, a number of journalists and news outlets have been applying a lot of pressure on the feds to provide an update on the case, beginning from. In 2023, several people filed Freedom of Information Act requests seeking as much information as the federal government could provide without jeopardizing the case. Of course, the federal government finally gave in a few days ago, releasing 2 portions of documents pertaining to the Shanquella Robinson investigation. Let me tell you, there was a lot going on in the case that we were unaware of, and the documents were heavily redacted. However, reports indicate that approximately a month after Robinson's death, the FBI spoke with an unidentified individual whose name was redacted from the file, stating that they were unsure of what happened. But the unidentified individual claimed that Robinson's friends said she was drinking and struck her head on the toilet. The individual also told investigators that they had seen photos of Robinson's body and that she had bruises and appeared to have been trampled. Fans are wondering if the Cabo Six knew about the cameras in the house and removed them in the weeks after Shanquella's death. The FBI files also show that in November 2022, authorities in Mexico told the FBI that they needed to interview someone on the trip to obtain a temporary detention order. Mexican prosecutors eventually issued an arrest warrant, but no one was ever extradited. As I mentioned earlier, the FBI files were heavily redacted, but according to someone in the know, the redacted portions allegedly point directly at the Cabo Six, with the evidence suggesting that they did allegedly murder Shanquella. What specifically caused the feds to release these heavily redacted documents after all this time? Well, it appears that Shayna's family is to blame because they have been fighting for justice for their daughter with Toth and Nell. They recently filed another civil lawsuit against the feds, which forced them to take action and ultimately agree to make amends with the family. On October 28, 2022, 25-year-old Shanquella Robinson of Charlotte, North Carolina, left North Carolina in good health, full of life and excitement, just like anyone else who would be heading on vacation. She had no way of knowing that she would never return home because she wasn't traveling alone. The trip was allegedly planned as a birthday celebration for one of her friends. At least that's the story everyone was told. A group of 6 individuals who were meant to be her pals were with her. Donovan, Malik Dyer, Winter Jackson, Elise Hyatt Dean, the group had gathered for what would have been a fun and restful vacation with her so-called best friend, Kill Cook, and Ezra Wiggins. But as time would show, there was much more going on behind the scenes. Notably, Nazir Wiggins didn't arrive with the rest of the group. Instead, he arrived a day later and has since stated that he had no idea what actually happened before he arrived. According to him, he was completely unaware of the events leading up to Shan's untimely and tragic death, while the rest of the group remained silent or gaped, which led to contradictory reports, and that by the time he arrived, things had already gotten out of control.
I got there, she was in the game room. They told me she was not feeling good, so I instantly go to her, put on her side, get a bag, and all that. So I'm sitting right next to her the whole time. I was not there till the next day. I didn't see a fight. I didn't know it was a fight. I didn't know it was a video. I didn't know they did any harm, anything. I went in there and told her it was alcohol poisoning, so that's what I helped her. That's what I helped her at. I didn't leave her side. I put on soft music, Summer Walker rubbing her head till the nurse came in. It's wrong. And for y'all to be attacking me, an innocent soul, like, I'm really innocent as fuck. I went there to enjoy my birthday. Like, to enjoy my birthday and to really just goddamn have fun. I didn't have not 1 second of fun. Didn't take one shot and then smoke one blunt and didn't do anything.
As information started to surface, it became brutally evident that what transpired in Cabo was anything but a normal vacation. From the outside, this appeared to be just a group of young adults leaving on an opulent trip to enjoy the sun-sanding celebration. Although Shanquella Robinson entered the villa with what she thought were her friends, not everyone there had the same goals. Things took a turn that nobody could have predicted, at least not from the outside looking in, Shanquella the morning after they got to Cabo. Her mother was contacted first by her so-called best friend, Kill Cook, who called to report that Shanquella wasn't feeling well and claimed that she had alcohol poisoning. Based on his description, it sounded like she was just dealing with a bad hangover, which isn't particularly unusual when on vacation with friends. Her mother didn't give it much thought at the time because they were probably in Mexico drinking and having a good time, and Kittle has been a reliable family friend for many years, so there was no reason to doubt what he was saying. At least not yet. But as the hours went on, things became much more serious. Kill called her mother once more, telling her that the situation had gotten worse and that doctors had come to the villa in ambulances and were actively attempting to revive Shanquella. It was evident that whatever was going on was much worse than a simple case of excessive drinking. What had begun as a supposedly minor health issue had escalated into a serious emergency, and despite the medics' best efforts, they were unable to bring her back to life. According to her death certificate, Shanquella was formally declared dead. Killed by 300 p.m. on October 29, the fact that the circumstances surrounding her murder didn't line up made the tragedy much more terrible. Her family had been told one thing, but as time passed and more sinister facts surfaced, the story became more complex. Chang has since changed. And if we examine the official death record more closely, the account that KH and the others provided begins to unravel. The document does indicate that Shanquella was discovered unconscious, but there is one significant. There is no mention of drinking in the details. Even though Khalil claimed to have been diagnosed with alcohol poisoning, the certificate contained no evidence that alcohol would have been listed as a contributing factor in her death if it had been even slightly involved. Instead, it indicated something much more concerning. Atlas luxation, a severe instability or dislocation where the skull meets the first vertebra in the neck, and severe spinal cord injury were listed as the official causes of death. This revelation completely contradicted what Kill had told her mother and raised even more questions about what actually happened in the villa. With this new information, it became evident that the story Shanquella's so-called friends were telling wasn't just misleading, it was an outright lie. The truth was far worse than anyone could have ever initially realized, and the more people looked into the case, the more unsettling the details became. Since Shanquella has never experienced this condition, we can assume that she acquired it through physical trauma. The spinal cord injury and atlas luxation weren't the only indications of trauma discovered in Shanquella's body. She also had visible injuries that told a much darker story. Atlas luxation is a condition where unstable or excessive movement is present in the first two vertebrae of the neck. To break it down further, it means that she essentially dislocated top bones in her spine, so-called. The autopsy report revealed that Shanquella had died about 15 minutes after suffering her injuries, which may not seem like a long time on paper, but when someone is in pain, every second feels like an eternity. Friends had conveniently left out that she had a noticeable knot on her head, a busted lip, and bruised and swollen eyes. These were not the kind of injuries that happened by accident. They were obvious signs that she had been physically attacked. Eternity, a disturbing video that surfaced online shortly after the news of her death, completely destroyed whatever lies these so-called friends had been trying to sell. It showed Shanquella being viciously attacked by one of the very people she had traveled with, Dean Jackson. To call it a fight would be completely inaccurate, because a fight is not what happened. The idea of her suffering in her last moments, possibly betrayed and confused, is devastating. Implied that both parties were interacting, but that wasn't the case here. Shanquella wasn't defending herself, throwing punches, or fighting back. Instead, she was acting viciously. The most unsettling aspect was that Ed was completely helpless, and the other so-called friends just watched. None of them tried to stop Dean or intervene to help her. Instead, they recorded it as entertainment. Then there was Cole, the person who called Shan's mother and pretended to be worried. But instead of intervening, he had The video changed everything because it revealed the truth. Shanquella had not only become ill and died from alcohol poisoning, but had been brutally attacked. The people who were supposed to be her friends had not only allowed it to happen, but had also lied to cover it up. I won't share the video because, first of all, she wasn't wearing clothes, and second, it was just too horrifying to watch. I will state that she was extremely hurt, and to make matters worse, none of her friends intervened to help. No one attempted to break up the altercation, and no one told Dejan to stop. Instead, they stood there like spectators, acting as though Shanquella wasn't someone they had called a friend. As unsettling as that video was, there are also reports that indicate that Dejan wasn't the only person who touched her. It's now being asserted that Winter Donovan was also involved in the assault, suggesting that Shanquella might have been attacked by a group of people rather than a single individual. When you consider the injuries indicated on her death certificate, a broken neck and spinal cord damage, it becomes clear that Winter's claim that she grabbed Shanquella by the neck and pushed her against a wall makes a lot of sense. If this is accurate, it would entail that even Dejan's attack wasn't the last blow. According to reports, Winter attacked after Dean had already beaten her, and Shanquella only stopped moving away from him after Winter's slander. Things worsened when a video of her friends gathered behind her back at the resort went viral on social media, giving the impression that they were planning an attack on her.
Keep it hot. What? What the old said, they crew.
Even worse, because the resort's con artist acknowledged that they treated her as an outsider, saying that she didn't seem to fit in with the others. When I introduced myself, she didn't smile or greet me, and she was uninterested in the celebration's mood. He also disclosed After Shanquella was declared dead, Cabo 6 said, "I left that area and stayed outside the main entrance to give them space to mourn and grieve. They called her mother to let her know that Shanquella had died, but they lied and claimed that she had died from alcohol poisoning. A few minutes later, I heard laughter."
And when they got back from the trip with her luggage, what did they tell you happened to your daughter?
That she got sick from drinking. It was alcohol.
The case was taken very seriously by Mexican authorities, who declared that they were treating it as if it were a femicide. They also issued a statement stating that the case was fully clarified and that an arrest warrant had been issued for the crime of femicide to the detriment of the victim and against an alleged perpetrator. a friend of the victim who is the direct aggressor. In reality, it wasn't a quell but rather a direct aggression, and all relevant procedures, including the Interpol alert and the request for extradition to the United States of America, were being handled. To send Ku's family an open letter in which they publicly named the suspect that the Mexican authorities had obtained. The letter mentioned the widely shared video of Shanquella being assaulted in the villa while nude by one of the 6 traveling companions, whom the witness identified as Dean Jackson. The letter goes on to say that Mexican law enforcement filed a warrant for Dejan Jackson, one of the 6 travel companions who escaped to the United States following Shanquella's death, as a result of the inquiry. The femicide against Shanquella Robinson, a homicide based on gender, was committed by Miss Jackson. If a U.S. citizen kills someone in Mexico, the body returns to the United States because you are. Although they are aware that they could face criminal charges in the United States under either federal or state law, depending on the specifics of the crime, the federal government apparently continued to drag their feet on the case until Chanel's family became so fed up with the nonsense that they filed a civil lawsuit against everyone involved in the case, by which I mean everyone, as they sued the Cabo 6, the U.S. Department of State, and the FBI. Her mother stated in the lawsuit that they needed justice for Shanquella Robinson, as it has been 2 years and no one has been arrested. But the lack of justice serves as a painful reminder of the vulnerabilities faced by people, especially young people. Black women seek adventure in strange places with strangers, and it is our duty to make sure that such tragedies are adequately addressed. The FBI then began working on the case rapidly, and the heavily redacted documents were released, although the news station had only been requesting them for nearly 2 years. Do you believe that justice for Shanquella will be served by the federal government at last? Or do you believe that this is all smoke and mirrors? Leave a comment below with your thoughts after seeing this next video.